Okay, we're live.
Welcome everyone to the Public Relations and Community Engagement Committee. We're going to switch up the schedule a little bit tonight, and this committee is going to go first and have a very abbreviated meeting. We have a presenter, and if FAC is here, they can give an update as well, and we'll have time for public comment, and that is the whole meeting tonight. So I guess first, are there any public comments right out of the gate?
Not at this time, Mrs. Johnson.
Okay. Thank you. Our presentation tonight is from Family Services. Marta Pacharo is going to talk about the Triple P parenting program. And honestly, Marta, you can just take it away. Let us know who you are and share anything about the program that you want to share. And then we'll have a little bit of a time where people can either ask questions or give any feedback, but take it away.
Hi, thank you very much. I really appreciate having this opportunity because I like it when anybody asks me to talk about our program. So we have been doing Triple P in the Pottstown School District for a few years now. And we also do it around the county at a bunch of different school districts and work with other agencies and deliver the program. This program is an evidence-based program, which means that they have data to support the fact that when you use this system and the information that they give you, that the system helps and it works for people who utilize the skills involved with that. So what they say it is one of the most effective parenting programs because it helps to give skills to families to help raise confident and healthy children, and most of all, to create stronger, healthy relationships within families. And it says that it helps to families to help maybe prevent some misbehavior from occurring. And when challenged with misbehavior, it helps them handle the misbehavior in a better way. We usually deliver this program for the school district in a group setting. So that group setting includes 5 sessions and within the group and 3 one-on-one sessions. And during those times together, we have an opportunity to talk about what is a healthy relationship and what does it look like? And what are some of the things that go on within a healthy relationship? And it also talks about what the pillars of Triple P are, which is 1, you have to have a safe and healthy environment for the family to live in. 2, that you have to provide the opportunities for diverse learning for your child. 3, that you need to use assertive discipline with your child. 4, you need to understand about child development. And 5, you need to take care of yourself as a parent. And so the sessions talk about each one of those things. And besides talking about each one of those things, they talk about how do you actually do those things? How is it that you provide an environment for the children to learn and to be able to make mistakes while they still have a safe place to land with you? And we talk about how is it that you use assertive discipline and what does that look like? And from day one, we talk about how you need to know what your boundaries are in your own home, and you need to convey to your children what are the rules of this household, and so that your children know exactly what it is that's going on. And we also talk about how you need to have consequences for behaviors when our children challenge what the rules are. And what do natural consequences look like? How do you enforce those consequences? Why is it important to have consequences? We talk about the effectiveness of having well-defined boundaries in the house and how boundaries help our children feel safe and know what to expect within family life, and also help them to begin to understand how they're going to have to act once they get into school, or like even if they're in school, okay? Because Our Triple P program is also divided up into certain ages. So we go from 0 to 12, which is for your younger group. And then we have an older setup that provides different tools for families when you have adolescents that you're dealing with. We talk about the importance of parents modeling the behaviors that they want to see from their children, how it's rather difficult to ask your children to respond to you in particular ways if you are not responding in those ways yourself. Talks very much about the importance of self-regulation, and children just don't learn how to self-regulate. They learn by watching others how to self-regulate. And one of the big things is about consistency and about parents learning how important it is to be calm. That yes, no one is a saint. And sometimes it really is hard to control yourself, but there are ways that you can take a moment and pause and also show your children, this is what happens when you get upset. And sometimes you just have to stop before you talk, before you do anything. And that teaches our children more than telling them, don't you think before you open your mouth, or why did you do that, or something like that. We show them how to do those things. And our behavior speaks volumes, because whether we know it or not, our children are sponges and they're picking everything up. I think one of the most important things about this program is it doesn't tell anybody what you're doing wrong. Nobody knows what goes on in a household but the parent and the child. And we believe that parents know their children better than anybody. But what we do know is that there are some things that consistently work across all racial and cultural boundaries, because this program is offered in 25 or more languages around the world. And it was created by somebody who's from Australia. And it's been in existence for about 30 years now. So there are some consistencies that happen no matter where your family is from. And that when you have these tools in your toolbox and you have something that you know that you can refer to and do when or if the time arises, that it helps you feel more secure in what it is that you're doing. And if the time comes when you might have extra questions, or you're poised at a certain place in time with raising your children, you can still refer to us, because we say that parenting is an ongoing thing. You know, sometimes little changes can make big differences. So if you're stuck with something, don't hesitate to reach out and call us again, because we're here as a source of information for you and somebody to use as a sounding board as well. So even though the program may be over, you still have an opportunity to call on us for anything that you might be concerned about or whatever. And so there's no magic wand to wave to fix everything. However, there are some very practical things that we can talk about, which unfortunately, because the children don't come with instructions, somebody created a little program that can help in very many ways for families. So that's what I have for you about Triple P. And so in a nutshell, that was Triple P.
Thank you. That's great.
Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Rodriguez.
I'm looking for the hand raising thing, and I can't find it again. I'm sorry. Most committee members already know that I'm a big fan of this program. Marta, for not only for the folks who are here, but also for maybe parents who are thinking, you know, I don't feel like I'm that bad of a parent, but you know, maybe I could learn a couple of things. This might be a good program. Can you just talk to us about how you would rate success, or maybe put in a different way, the feedback that you've received from folks who have gone through the program?
I would love to tell you that, because I will give you one instance where I was very fortunate to have a group that was just dads. Okay. And you don't always have that opportunity. Most of the time, I'm sorry to say, people think, okay, the mom's going to go and do a parenting group. So I had these dads, and the consistent theme each week when we met was, wow, I didn't know about that. And I didn't understand this. And then what we ask you to do is in between is practice. Practice these things that we're talking about. And the first piece of homework I give everybody the first week we're there is, so all I want you to do this week is be calm as much as you can be calm. And I've had these men came back and they said, what a difference it makes when I don't raise my voice to my children. What a difference it makes when I just tell them in a calm voice what to do. And I got individual emails from each of the fathers that said thank you, because they understood better now in looking back what they wanted from their own parents that they didn't get and what they thought that they could provide for their children today. And, you know, if it makes you think about your parenting differently, I think that that's the greatest gift you can give anybody, right?
It's
Thank you.
self-reflection. That's
A self-reflection.
Yeah.
Exactly. Self-reflection. And I think probably the most important thing about this is that people walk away. I have yet to have anybody walk away that didn't say that they got something from this. And I will tell you, I've had deans of colleges take this program, and I've had doctors take this program. This isn't because you're having a problem with your children. This is to, like, if you choose to go to yoga class, if you choose to go to a meditation class, this is to inform you. This is to give you more information maybe than you had before you walked into the room.
Thank you.
Ms. Kanzanik.
Yes. Hi, Marta.
Hi, Phoebe.
I have a comment and two sort of questions. So I was actually going to say, years before I was a board member, I took this class, and at the time I had three little guys who were a challenge, to say the least. And taking this class, I learned way more about myself and my reactions, and you took the words right out of my mouth. I was amazed at how my behavior was impacting them. And I tried to explain that to people at the time, and they didn't. It's hard to understand what you mean by that unless you yourself kind of take an inward look. My question was, I have two. One, if someone at the school district wants to take this class but isn't comfortable in the group setting, is that a possibility? And number
Absolutely.
two, okay, and number two, can you talk a little bit how you might tailor it for someone who has children with special needs, for example?
Okay, because that's another thing that because we have training that deals especially with children that might have disabilities, there are particular things that we talk about more in depth, and we can add a few extra classes onto the program so that they get specific stuff that everybody gets, and then they get more specific stuff for the challenges that they're seeing with their own child. Okay, so it is tailored, and it can be tailored to people's needs. That happens more easily when it is one-on-one, but it can also happen if there is a bunch of people in a group that could benefit from having that at the extra class time as well.
Any other questions or thoughts from board members? I will say, leading up to this committee meeting, because I was thinking about parenting and just this general topic, I asked on Facebook of my friends, like, did you do a class? Did you read a book? Like, what did you do, if anything, to help you with parenting? And there were answers all over the place, but some of my favorites were the ones that were something along the lines of, we're we're winging it because no one gave us the handbook. No one gave us the handbook. And so I've heard that over the years so many times. And when my kids were younger, I benefited from reading books. Like that was good. That caused some self-reflection and kind of just that look at like, what am I doing and what's working? And you can see the results of good or bad. You can see what's going on often, but having someone else to talk with, someone who can like, whether it's sometimes it's less formal, it's just a friend who's, you know, noticing something, or you're talking about how you handle this and they handle this. But also that more formal setting can be nice to just be like, let's talk about child development. Like, what can you expect at this age?
Yes.
How common is this problem? And one more thought. You used this word probably 4-5 times through the presentation, consistency. And I remember when my kids were little, and even before I had kids and would just observe other parents, just seeing the power of that in stabilizing behavior and just consistency. Like it's not just with parenting, it's exercise and diet and routine habits through your entire life. Just it is magical. And so I loved that you specifically mentioned that, because I am a huge believer that that is like the secret sauce in many ways, as long as, of course, the habits that you're doing are actually healthy.
And there, that's a big plus.
Yes.
That's a big
Yes.
plus.
Yes.
And I will tell you another thing. I always tell everybody, I know they look at me and people say, you're not in the midst of this. And I laugh and I tell everybody, I know, and my kids are probably older than you. However, I am in the midst of parenting a granddaughter who is on the spectrum, who has ADHD, who has sensory processing disorder, who has things and things and things. And every day I feel blessed that I can put into practice what I was trained to tell others about. Because if I didn't know this and I parented my granddaughter the way I parented my children, I probably wouldn't be sitting here talking to you right now, because I see what the positive effects have been by doing what it is that I'm doing, which is in many ways the opposite of what I did when I raised my children. And with having a long view, I can just honestly say, do I think I was a good mother? Yes, I do think I was a good mother. Do I think that I was the best parent I could be with what I knew at that time? But now I know better, and I can tell you I'm doing significantly better, because there's that thing of consistency. There's that thing of remaining calm. There's that thing of what I know now, because I understand the child in a different way, gives me the capacity to parent better. And knowledge is power, right?
Yep. Mr. Amato.
Yeah, thank you. So first, thank you. Very interesting presentation. And I have to say that I would agree 100% with what you've laid out, and take it one step further, that all of those foundational blocks that you're talking about that lead to good parenting, they really lead to being a good person, being a good citizen. Fill in the blank. Doesn't matter. Fill in the blank. So we need to, at this end, I think, keep modeling for others, and
Yes.
hope that those others keep modeling for others, and keep building a pyramid that takes us to the place where I think we all need to be. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And we're going to, I have a flyer to go out to the school district. We're going to offer a group beginning in March. I think it's the 27th. So we will have that. And there's, you know, we have different things at Family Services that can help support families. You know, since Triple P is a short-term help for families, we have other things that can help in a longer term. Our PAT program goes from 0 to 6 years old, you know, through kindergarten. but we do have programming, and we have a fatherhood program just for fathers. So we're going to offer that program as well, which helps to build on all of these things with Triple P about modeling behavior and the important role a father plays in any child's life. And we have Parent Cafe where parents can come and talk about some of the issues that they're being challenged with raising their child, and understand that they're not alone in doing that. So we do try to offer many things so that the parents can help to create their own network of support in this thing, because I get we don't always have a lot of time to be a parent, because time is the very precious commodity that we have anymore. But it is the most important job that we can do. And that's why I try to tell everybody, it isn't the amount of time that you spend with them, because they will only ever remember how it is that you made them feel when you were with them. So make every moment count. And that's what we're trying to help you do.
Excellent.
So
Ms. Kansianik, do you have another thought?
Yeah, I was just gonna add on to the when she mentioned about the upcoming group. And I really hope people sign up for it. It's such a rewarding experience to know that you're not alone, to know that other parents don't know what they're doing either, you know? 'Cause on Facebook it looks like everybody parents great, you know. But when you're in the room learning that everybody is struggling, it really is a rewarding experience. So hopefully people sign up for it.
Yeah. Ms. Bearden.
Thank you. And I would just like to touch upon a point that Marta kind of made, which is you could have 3 children and each child could respond to cues differently. So really learning the child as the parent and knowing what helps and triggers and supports and nourishes each student, knowing the child as an individual is key. And frankly, I helped raise nieces and nephews. I read books and I attended training sessions. And we had some series, and I can't remember what it is. You might remember, but we had series with parents coming in, and we had time for the children to be away with other persons. And we learned good parenting skills. And that was key. And I don't think there's one forum that helps a parent. Like you said, there's no guidebook, but there's not one forum. There could be one child, and you still would need 10 different resources for that one child. And so don't ever feel like, I think it's important for parents to never feel like they're failures. We can learn from each other, and we can learn from every resource that affords itself available for us. So thank you very much, Marta.
Thank you for saying that, because I try to tell parents, and I could be the poster child for this. You can't know what you don't know. Okay. And there's so much out there to know, and so much information coming at you. And again, knowing your child first and then getting this information, yes, can make a difference, but have grace with yourself. You can't do anything better until you know better, right?
Mr. Armato.
Wow. So I wasn't going to say anything. I was hoping to stay quiet the rest of the night, but you just reinforced such a strong belief. When you talk about knowing the child, take that same principle and apply it to be the teacher in the classroom, be the coach, be the administrator of the building, be the superintendent of the district. I don't care. Take your pick. You have to know the person, because that will determine how you approach what you do. And since everybody here, probably except you, Marta, know that I base a lot of my life in the world of athletics. And I can tell you that I do not send the message to each athlete the same way, because they don't accept it the same way. Thank you.
True story. I assume too that just as a lot of this can be adapted for parents with kids who have special needs, this is very adaptable to blended families.
Oh,
Because I
Yes.
also, I know that there's an extra challenge there often, be whether a grandparent raising a kid or step parents or whatever.
That's
I mean,
absolutely,
yes, so,
absolutely.
yeah, I think
We
that's,
do try
that's
to tell you that, I'm sorry, that it is for caregivers of
Mhm.
children. Okay. It doesn't mean that you have to be a parent. It's caregivers. I've offered it to daycare and brought the program in for daycare workers so the daycare workers could do it because I mean, talk about modeling behavior, right? I mean, you know, that's the bottom line there. And how important it is that you understand your child's temperament and that all these children aren't the same. And I get that when we have a lot of kids together, we expect that they're going to follow the rules and stuff. But you know, there will be times when they won't. And how we respond to that child can make all the difference in the world because now we have science on our side too, because science knows now that the children mirror us at a very young age. And I tell people, look, I don't think the mirroring ever stops because did you ever see how you felt when you were in a room with somebody that was calm and made you just feel safe and comfortable? That's our job. Okay. That's our job when we work with children, is to make them feel safe and make them feel comfortable and make them feel like they belong.
That's great. So thank you so much for being here. I think it was a great presentation and really good discussion. And I know that we'll be passing out that flyer. And is there anywhere else that we would tell people to go for information? Between, like, where would I direct them if somebody texted me like right now and said, how do I get a hold of this lady about this class? Tell me.
You can call Family Services. Okay. And I'm the family support supervisor and I also do Triple P. I'm the coordinator for the program. So they can call, but we have a whole little department here that's about family support systems. And so if they call Family Services here in Pottstown, who is celebrating our 125 years here in the community. And so it's something that has been here for a long time and we consistently have been a part of the community and hope to be here for another 125 years. So if they call here, they will be connected to someone who can help them.
Wonderful. Thank you again for being here. This was
Thank you
wonderful.
so much. I appreciate it. And thank you. And thank all of you board members for all the work that you do every day. Okay. It's a hard job and people don't always understand what it is that you have to do. So thank you for all you do.
Much appreciated. Thanks.
All right. Thank you.
Have a great night.
Thanks. You as well.
Next up, is there an FAC update? I guess that would be if Mercedes is in the waiting room.
Good evening, everyone. Do you need me to say my name and address or?
I mean, you can give, if you're going to give public comment, sure. If FAC update is what I was thinking for right now.
I'm going to do.
Oh, sure.
I like
Go for it.
Okay, so for the FAC update, it wasn't even supposed to be me doing it, but I'm here, so I will. I already let everybody know how our last event turned out, the Pajama Jamming Jam. It was really nice. And there was a lot of other events going on. So even though there were other events going on, we still had 50 people. I had, you know, other colleagues and people telling me that was still a good turnout. I was a little still sad, but you know what? It was still good. It was good. That's just me being a little tough on myself. But I wanted to wait till we had that event to let everybody know. I was telling y'all a while ago, wait for it. The next event is going to be, get your phones out, get your calendars out, get your pens and your pencils. May 17th, 6 to 9 at the Pottstown High School. Pottstown's Got Talent. So anybody, even parents, family. So This is the time for people to show off their abilities, what they're gifted in. There's so many kids who play instruments. We got all them kids TikToking. If a family wants to make a TikTok together, I just think this would be a good time for everybody just to come out and enjoy some festivities and end the school year with a nice celebration. That's the FAC update. And also, we're going to be planning ahead, same format with which was new this year. Every other meeting. So instead of meeting once a month, meet an event. So there will be 5 meetings and then 5 events, because that's the whole point, is just continue to be engaged with parents. And then we're just playing around with different days and dates and time to be able to reach everybody. There's people that was able to come out on our events on Saturdays that was never able to come out on events during the week due to work and stuff like that. We have had parents even divide and conquer. Like, normally it was the mom bringing their kid. And then I've had moms like, oh, well, so-and-so could take them. They had the dad bring them. So, and that was cool. And then the dad was able to go back and like, wow, that was a good time. So I like that. And so another thing, FAC, made tool reminders. So I was just hoping that moving forward for, family engagements, there's more, like, I know the flyer goes out, but like in the buildings, if it can be flyers posted on the doors, the entrances, cafeterias in the gym, where are common spaces for the children, because a lot of the high school students, they have a lot going on, and then parents don't, you know what I'm saying? They're very a lot independent, and they forget they have a lot of other things to worry about. These kids are stressed and they have to work to help pay bills in their families' households, and then they also are trying to figure out where they're going to attend college. So I just was hoping that maybe we can have them posted around the school, so as a nice friendly reminder, that'd be greatly appreciated. That's all I have for the FAC part. So is it okay if I just go straight
Yeah,
into
you can go right into
comment?
public comment, because that'll be next.
Okay. So it was so cool because for my public comment, I had, what was on my heart was, parents are a child's first and most important teachers. And before school, kids learn from what you read to them, how you talk to them, and the experiences you give them. We got a parent on your feet. And that was crazy because when I came in this meeting, Miss Marta was just dropping gems. And I'm like, wow, like I was over here snapping fingers. So also too, I like the fact, again, I can't say it enough. Like Mr. Armato said, it takes a village. It really does. And it's okay to not be okay. Also, as us being humans, we got to be able to show our kids like, hey, I made a mistake. I could have handled it this way. But you know what? I let my emotions get the best of me. So for myself, I'd rather be called a mean, strict parent, because this is what I get from my team. But guess what? I'd rather be called that than being a neglectful and abusive parent any day. Okay? So we just got to have each other's backs. Everybody can't be Martha Stewart's. I have friends who are Martha Stewart's, and we communicate, and that's what it takes a village, and we work together. Thank you so much for listening, guys, and I hope we see you guys in May, and spread the word for us, please. Thank you. Have a blessed night.
Thank you. Have a good night. Do we have any other public comments?
Not at this time, Mrs. Johnson.
Okay, then we will adjourn this meeting. Are we going right into an executive session?
Yes, we will leave this and go into our private room for executive session, and then we will return to this room for our next meeting, finance.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Nick, my computer just came up saying it's going to restart. Should I let it?
Yeah, it should only take about 5 minutes. And it only probably giving you like a 10-minute warning, right?
I don't know. 13. I don't know if it's 13 minutes or 13 seconds.
Probably minutes, but I'd say just let it restart and then
All
come
right.
back in.
All right. Well, just so you know, if everybody comes back and I'm not there yet, I'm going to quick hit restart.
Okay.
All right. Thanks. Yay, I made it back.
That wasn't too bad.
No, it wasn't actually. Usually it takes longer. Thank goodness.
once Tom is in, he can give us the green light and we can move forward. It shows we're live. Are we live?
Yes, Madam President, we are live. The instructions were to keep the room live and open as if we were in person together so that everybody knows that there is a meeting going on.
Thank you. Just confirming that what I'm seeing is correct, and I turn it back over to our chair, Mr. Hilton.
I think you're on mute, Mr. Hilton.
Yeah.
Before we begin, does anybody have any public comment?
Yes, we have one public comment.
Okay.
Good evening, Mercedes Jackson, High Street, Pottstown, PA. I just want to clarify on the event that I said earlier, that's at the high school. Anytime when FAC has an event at any building in the district, it's for all families and children in the Pottstown School District. So you do not have to have a child at the high school. You can have a child at any grade level as long as you are residents and students in the Pottstown School District. Thank you.
Thank you. So because of the depth of conversation we're going to need to have about finance, we're not going to be doing any facilities tonight. And so I'll move right into finance and Mrs. Oakley.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Hutton. Board members, there was a question in the past about tax bills and the ability that we can customize and add some language to our tax bills. And I just wanted to report out that, yes, that is an ability. We can do that. And as we move through this budget process, if we are going to move forward with some kind of rebate program, that we have the ability to print that onto the tax bills. So that is my update regarding that. Secondly, we have two contracts for your consideration. One is a Strive agreement, a grant-funded Strive agreement through the Pottstown Area Health and Wellness Foundation. And the second is a special education ESY, which is a summer program extended school year for your consideration for approval. Lastly, I have our second look at the 25-26 budget, and I'm happy to move right into that if there are no questions. Okay, so here we are in March, Finance Committee, and we're taking a second look at our preliminary budget. Again, the timeline for budget adoption is our deadline from PDE is June 30th, 2025. We do need to adopt a preliminary budget, and we can then move forward and adopt a final budget. So 30 days in between those two dates, but we would need to have the final adopted by June 30th. Historically, our Act 1 index. So if board members recall, over the past 10 years, the school district raised taxes 2 times. We did that in fiscal 18-19 and fiscal 19-20. Since that time period, we have not raised taxes, and our millage has been 1.96. This year, we adopted the resolution not to exceed our adjusted index, which is 5.8%, and the Act 1 base is 4%. Keys are stuck. So our tax base, we have kind of leveled off in the past few years. We've been kind of steady around that $760 million tax duplicate amount. This is the amount that we start our budget with each year. I would say all of our surrounding counties, entities, school districts start their year with a higher tax duplicate value than prior year, which just allows for general increase in revenues. We have not had that fortunate situation, and we've actually, as you can see, over the past 10 years have had a significant decrease in our tax assessment, which puts us in an even more tough situation starting our budget each year. Act 1 this year, the base index is 4% and our adjusted index is 5.8%. If the board was looking to raise taxes at any one of these thresholds here, all the way to the right would be the additional revenue that could be generated by a tax increase. So if we were to go to the index of 5.8%, that would generate an additional $1.75 million. So in looking at that, if we were to increase taxes to the full amount, something else that's been topic of conversation has been the increase in the homestead farmstead gaming revenues. The state has said, legislation has said that we are to anticipate an increase. They've not given us any parameters as to what that increase would look like. But for illustration purposes, I assumed a 25% increase in our homestead farmstead and what that would look like to our approved homestead properties. So last year, our average assessed value was $78,000. At the current millage rate, the taxes assessed would be $3,314. If we were to go the full 5.8%, the new millage rate would be 44.39, and the tax per that same assessed value would be a little over $3,500. Additionally, if we were to see an increase in farmstead at 25%, that would generate an additional $192. It would generate an additional $167 per homestead in rebate dollars. So the tax increase at the full 5.8 assessed, 5.8 Act 1 assessed, sorry, I can't see my screen. Our adjusted index, 5.8 adjusted index, would be $192 in additional tax per household. The rebate would hopefully come in at around that 25%, if not more, and that would generate additional $167 in savings. So if you look at that on an annual basis and a monthly basis, that would be the impact to those approved homesteads. And again, just the dollars in the homestead farmstead rebate over the last few years, the number of homesteads that we've had, and then what that reduction looks like on a per homestead basis. So the first look budget, we were looking at state revenues at 50% of the governor's budget, and we didn't have any funds allocated to property tax relief. We were assuming 4% increases in healthcare and insurance, charter and special ed tuition increases, federal funding flat, and no changing to staff and programs. So how did we get to the $9 million? Overall, we were looking at increases in salaries at $3.5 million, benefits 2.1, services, which are all related services, professional services, $2 million, transportation, looking at an increase of $1.1 million, and tuitions, $2.7 million. Looking at our tuitions historically, just 2 years ago, we were paying out a little over $8.5 million. Next year's budget, we're looking at $10.9 million of regular ed, special ed, alt ed tuitions. This includes charter and cyber charter, and we'll look at some of those numbers as well. But that's over $2.4 million in 2 years, and that's a tough number to absorb in any given year, let alone $1 million, $1.2 million on average a year. I mean, if you look at that in context of our Act 1, if we go to the index, we're generating $1.7 million. And if $1.2 million of that dollar is going right out the door for tuitions, I mean, that's a big big chunk of any increase that you would even be able to assess. Special ed in general, as you can see, 2021 through 25, 26, huge increases here. We knew that post-COVID, we were going to deal with increased special education costs. We knew that that's a national problem, that kids came back. They're not on the levels that they were pre-COVID. And this is what that looks like in terms of dollars. So down the left-hand side, you'll see the 100, 200, 300 category. It just starts with salaries, benefits, professional services, tuition, transportation, and general supplies. And as you can see, 23, 24 to 24, 25, I mean, right in those years with the professional services and the tuitions, I mean, we're seeing immense increases. And as Stephen alluded to, but in the past, this isn't unique to Pottstown. The special education is, it's being felt all around us. So when we look at our charter school numbers, if you look back through the 2020 through current, there's definite increase there. There's definite increase in number of students who are attending charter schools. We're sitting at about 320 students on a monthly last month. So 320 students, we were paying those rates, whether they're regular ed, brick and mortar, which is a standing building special ed, or a cyber special ed. Those are the tuition rates that we're paying per student times 320 students. So as you can see, that's a pretty large chunk, and those numbers are increasing, and that's where some of the deficit dollars are coming from, is just these increases in number of students attending and the rates that we're paying for those students. Transportation is another area that we've experienced really large sums of increases. The way the state transportation formula works with subsidy deduction for the MCIU, they handle all of our early intervention transportation, which are kiddos who are not school age. So they're not 5 years old. They're kiddos who are pre-5 years old, so 3 and 4 year olds who are attending early intervention programs. And we pay for the transportation to get those students to those programs. So as you can see, there's a lag in the way that formula works. But last year we saw about 800,000. So we went from 156,000 to $800,000 in a subsidy deduct for transportation. This year I anticipate that to sit around 960,000, and next year we're looking at a little bit over $1 million. That is, we'll move through some of the slides to see where those kids are being transported to, but that's not including our regular special ed transportation and our BARTH transportation, our 5th grade transportation, our non-pub transportation. All of those costs are indicated on the line that's the CMD line item, which is our transportation contractor. So as you can see, the lag of the COVID catch-up game has really hit us as far as that MCIU line item for transportation. Transportation is just up in general. Again, not anything that's unique to Pottstown. It's an issue that's surrounding us as well, and it's an unfunded or underfunded, slightly funded. We receive about a little over $600,000 to put it into perspective, and we're incurring over $4 million of transportation costs from the state. So just to dive in a little bit deeper, the MCIU transportation. So where are these kids going? We have 8 kids who are generating a transportation bill, almost $550,000. And as you can see, that's the school year. It's 180, or average is 180 days, and the cost per day and the total cost. So again, these are just things that are just passed through to us, and we've done some things, we're working towards some things, but the issue at hand is sometimes the needs are greater, and the contract that we can get to transport these kids, that is the market rate of those costs, unfortunately. Early intervention, as I said, these are our school aged kids, and they attend early intervention programs. They attend these programs in Norristown, Pottsgrove, Solderton, as you can see the list here. What does that mean for us? It's about a little over $400,000 a year in transportation costs that we are absorbing for our students who are not even of school age just yet. This is the same cost for early intervention kids, but this is for their summer program. So another $50,000 added for our early intervention transportation. Post-COVID, during COVID, we added a number of positions. So this is a summary that shows all of those additional positions that we added and the total of those positions. Another area that we've been focused on and we've looked at through our facilities committee with the feasibility study and the information that we've gotten regarding energy costs and energy costs per building and what that looks like. As you know, we've been working with EI Associates to go through some of areas that we could potentially make efficiencies within our buildings. And this is our natural gas and electric costs since the 2021 school year and where we're projected for 25-26. So as you can see, those increase rates, like we're looking at 21% increase in utility costs, which, as a reminder, our ACWIN index is 5.8%, and we're looking at a 21% increase. So there's, it's not, we're just seeing things skyrocket, inflation, just really out of control increases that are really hard to manage. The governor's proposal, we did have a proposed increase, a little over $21 million in revenue. The base was reset. We budgeted conservatively at 50% of what the governor had proposed. So what is included in the revenue in this look budget is $20,549,000. Special ed subsidy. Special ed, our subsidy was increased minusculely. I guess I'll use that if it's the appropriate word to describe. You can see the bottom line item is our special ed expenditures. Back to 17-18, we were expending about $12.6 million. And we, in 23-24, expended a little, almost $19 million, $18.8 million. The revenue that we get from the state, $3.6 million. I mean, I think you can see the discrepancy in that unfunded mandate. Our Ready to Learn funding has increased. Tax equity and adequacy funds are included into this Ready to Learn pot of money. We budgeted $5.9 million. There's $6.9 million that the governor has proposed. I'm not going to speak to, where they are with their budget. I know that they've met their sessions. Where will they end up? I'm not sure. We budgeted 50% of the increased revenues. We're hopeful that we'll see the full amount that they proposed, which would be helpful for us. Just as a reminder, they didn't pass a budget on time last year. I wouldn't be able to say whether they're going to pass an on-time budget this year or not, but that really adds to the challenge that we have of passing an on-time budget when we don't know what we are getting from the state. So just as a reminder, 1 month ago, we were looking at a $9.1 million deficit. in making some adjustments to the revenues and expenses, we're looking at about a $6.1 million deficit, and we still know we have a ways to go. Through the second look, we were able to update some of the pre-K counts funding, the transportation subsidy came through. We received updated workers' comp contributions, and we also made some administrative recommendation to create efficiencies but reduce impact on programs. The PA property tax rebate was something that we put in last year's budget. Just as a reminder to board members, it was a piggyback off the state program for property tax and rent. The income thresholds were updated last year, so to include incomes up to $45,000 if you fit the parameters of the program, and there would be 909 qualified people who would be able to take advantage of, or who do take advantage of the PA property tax, or at least they did in 2021 in Pottstown. So to date, we had 190 applicants, and you can see the breakdown of homeowners versus renters, and the total that we've rebated, $87,000. Our fund balance, this is just a snapshot of where we sit with our fund balance and the breakdown as to where those funds are sitting in fund balance. So I'm going to stop the share just so I can see everybody, but I'm confident they're probably, I already see, yep, I see some questions. So Mr. Hilton, I'll turn it to you first if you want to, navigate this question part of the meeting.
Mrs. Oakley, I'll turn it back to you.
Okay. Mrs. Spence.
Thank you. So I was trying to write notes while you were talking. So bear with me while I try to read my own scribble. Just a few questions. I'm gonna just put it out there. The Trump administration fired about 1,300 employees the other day, and with the intention that eventually he wants to shut down the Department of Ed on the federal level. Now, my question is, how much in funds do we receive for early childhood, early ed programs, and special ed from federal government? And what would the impact of that closure do on this budget, or is that more focused on next year following what is this, 25, 26, so 26, 27?
Sure.
And
so, okay.
let me get it all because I'm
Okay.
And then the other one was, is there a way to save energy costs if we partnered up with the borough and the library, if we purchased in bulk? And then I think I had one last question. If we don't receive the funds from the state, what happens then? Just like, just the arbitrary.
Sure. So I'll start with the federal revenue. So in this budget, we have $3.6 million of federal revenue. How that will shake out with regards to the cuts, I don't know. I'm not sure anybody knows. But I know Mr. Rodriguez could probably speak a little bit more to the certain programs that are more so targeted than others. I know there's a lot of uncertainty there, but our revenues that we have from federal for this 25-26 is $3.6 million, and we've budgeted them flat. The majority of that is IDEA, which is special education funds, and Title I funds. I don't know where they rank on the chopping block. I'd like to say low, the last I heard, but again, that's a whole area of trying to stay up on and changing by the day. The energy costs. So we already participate in a consortium for energy costs through the IU. there's a lot of school districts that are in that consortium. So we, with confidence, I can say we have probably the most competitive, if not the most, we have very, very competitive rates. We have consultants who monitor the market and purchase for most of the districts in Montgomery County. So I'd be happy to look, and I have in the past looked at other opportunities for energy, natural gas, and electricity procurement. However, I've found that offering through the IU is probably our best bet. And lastly, I think you asked about state funding and the proposed budget from the state. We've conservatively budgeted about 50% of what the governor has in as far as increased for Pottstown. So I believe if we were to get the full amount that the governor has proposed, it is a little bit over $1 million. So probably not quite $1.5 million. But as you know, that could go up, or, I mean, unfortunately, we could also be looking at, getting less than the 50% of what the governor has proposed. So again, another challenge when it comes to this exercise.
Yeah, there's been some talk that, maybe it won't be what we expect. So, but it changes every day. So who knows? Thank you.
Yes. Mrs. Johnson?
Sorry. Okay. I guess one of the things that I've been thinking about since we first knew that there was a big deficit here, is about the money we got from COVID and what we used it for, and the money that we've received from an increase in fair funding, which has also been significant and is year over year. And putting you on the spot a little bit. So whatever you can do with this. Do you know what the increase in state funding has been over the last, say, 5 or so years? Like, our increase between, let's say, COVID to now, how much more do we get per year from the state? Is it around 10 million more?
Yeah, it's a little less than 10 million. It's a little less than 10 million, but between 9 and 10. Yeah.
Because I'll just say, in my mind, during COVID, we got 13 million in total ish, like not recurring, but in total. Tell me if I'm totally off on that.
No, in the basic ed, yeah.
No, I'm sorry, like federal COVID money. So I'm kind of talking about two different things here, and I apologize, but COVID, ESSER money.
Fucking ESSER.
Yes, we got one-time money as COVID relief, and that was just not something we knew that was going to go away. Was that approximately at 13 million in total?
We got approximately 10, 4, and 1, so
15.
15, yeah.
Okay, and we used a lot of that for one-time expenses, and we also did some programs like the house model at the middle school, counselors. Like, we added different things. We've changed programming in general, knowing that to the degree we were using COVID money, ESSER money, it was going to go away. And if we really like this stuff, we can commit to keeping it and making it work. So I kind of have had that on my radar, that we wanted to be eyes wide open with any of that one-time money we were using for a program. And part of why I felt comfortable doing that was because we were also seeing our increase in state money that went up. Somewhere in your presentation, you had how much we added in programs during COVID. I don't necessarily need you to go back in the slides, but was it about 4 million?
4.1, yeah.
Okay. So not that this changes the number at the end of the day for our gap, but is it fair to say that the amount we've received in fair funding would cover those programs if we really liked them? If all other things were equal?
Yeah, if there was no inflation, yeah, they would more than cover them. The problem is the inflation, the charter school, the tuitions, the transportation expense. I mean, everything, those areas have just increased at rates of like, it wasn't 3%, like outpacing.
I saw, yeah,
Yeah.
it's wild and it's unpredictable, to a large degree, which I can appreciate. So I'm just trying to, I guess I've been trying to wrap my head around this for the last month, because at the first look, I was like, how is this possible? Why does it feel like we've known that costs are going up, but it just felt like so drastic all of a sudden. And that's not really like, that's not a question. It's more just expressing what I'm gonna guess other board members, and frankly, all of you administrators too, are kind of like, wow, that got big real fast. And because I thought we were being eyes wide open with COVID money, ESSER money, that's part of why it surprised me, because I thought that our increases in fair funding would have covered these things. And they kind of do. It's just inflation. We can blame inflation. We can blame all of these needs that we have very little control over.
So if I just
Yeah.
point you to this slide to summarize that real quick. So 2020, just say, the figures are close enough. We received about $13 million in basic ed subsidy, right? That's the chunk of where our increases have been from the state, is the basic ed subsidy. We don't have $22 million in that budget. So if you look at that just in terms of, where did that extra funding go? I mean, it went right here, right to special ed.
Yeah.
I mean, there it is.
Right.
So
It went out the door, and we didn't raise taxes, which I didn't want to, and I'm not saying we should have, because we're already so high in comparison with our neighbors and in comparison with the rest of the state. So understood all of it. It's just, wow. This is just, I feel like these are the same sentiments I expressed last time, but I just am still right there. I also want to note, like, while we've gotten more money from the state, and we all know we aren't there in terms of what they should be giving us versus what they are giving us. I recently went and tracked down the numbers for like over the last 10 years since we had a fair funding formula that could even help us to determine between now and then how much we've been shortchanged by the state. I would just like to note it's well over $100 million at this point by one person who I won't mention, but who is very closely associated with the court case that was won. He said you'd be pretty safe to assume it's about $160 million. And so that's worth noting, that this, while I've been glad to celebrate our wins at the state level in getting more funding, the deficit is just so remarkable on that end. It just feels like we are swimming against an absolute riptide. So anyway, I'll save any more questions that I may end up having.
Okay. I see Mr. Amato.
Yes, thank you. I will preface everything by first saying again, I appreciate the job that you, Mr. Rodriguez, and Mr. Boyer are doing to try to head our ship in the right direction as it relates to being financially fiscal, while at the same time providing quality educational opportunities for our students. So I appreciate that. If I look at the numbers that you presented, it seems like if we were able to bring back all of our cyber charter students, we wouldn't be sitting here today talking about a $9 million deficit. We'd be talking about $1 million ahead of the ball game in terms of numbers. Just that and that alone. The Homestead Farmstead Act, which I believe is very, very beneficial to homeowners and very underutilized. So I do think as a district, we probably need to look at, again, how can we best inform and encourage our homeowners to take advantage of the Homestead Farmstead Act, knowing that every person that you add, you actually decrease the amount of money that they're going to receive, because there's a finite pot, and the more people that draw from that pot draw less. So, but that being said, there's still a rebate. That, however, the Homestead Farmstead Act, however, does not in any way benefit businesses, landlords, people of that nature. That will not benefit them. So when they see a rise in taxes, their knee-jerk reaction many times is to raise the cost of whatever it is they have. For instance, now your rent just increased. If I understood what you were presenting, the game plan is still to maintain the property tax rebate program. Is that correct?
No, there's no funding in this budget for the
There's no
property
funding.
tax. No
Okay.
funding.
Okay, I misunderstood what you were saying, which was why I asked the question. Then I think I am through all of my questions. Thank you.
Mrs. Bearden?
Hi. So, like everyone else, we're, brainstorming and thinking on the cuff about how and what. So clearly, charter school rates, when we look at the jump on your numbers, 194 to 306 between 2021 and 24, 26, 25, 26, transportation from 1.4 to 4.1 million for 8 kids. I mean, that's a deficit that I can't even imagine how we could possibly make that up, to go from 1.4 to 4.1 for transportation for 8 kids. But I guess my first thought is, if there's ever a time that we don't pass a budget before the state, which in my time of being on the board, I think we always have, and Tom can correct me, but I think we always have passed it before the state. In my time, at least, I think we wait till the last possible time to get as close as possible to the state passing a budget, which again, they may or may not pass on time, considering the changes that have continuously occurred. I think we reevaluate the selections that we had budgeted. We probably did so very responsibly in saying this is what we were going to budget for, knowing there were some things that we absolutely needed to do, and can't just quantify by grant funding, that we reevaluate those things. Obviously, the areas of absorption that we already have done over the years, we can't really do much with that. But if there's anything else that we can absorb someplace, that we need to look for that. I think we have reserves in excess. I think we need to look to reserves for no less than 1 million. I might stretch between 1 to 2, but I don't think and that would be on, the fact that we're even able to do that is to your, awesomeness in ensuring that we have what we need for reserves, you and the rest of the team. So certainly look to you for your opinion and thoughts on that. But certainly we would, I think, need to bring ourselves up a bit by having the reserves. And I think that we really have to be conscious of what our expectation is for our students. Our primary function is to safely educate our students. That's our primary function, and our staff to perform same with. So when we get down to looking at such a deficit as this, by the way, is the hospital, are there any numbers? Is there a deficit in anything in there that's included or not included in relationship to the hospital?
So the tax base that we have right now does not include the hospital.
Okay. I I think we need to really evaluate whatever it means for us to be able to safely educate our students. If we go to even considering the tax increase, and I know that's not something I really would like to do, but that would bring us up, was that 1.5 million, 1.7 million?
If we went to the 5.8 adjusted index, it would be a little over 1.7 million.
And that weeds us down a bit. So things for the board to consider, less of a question for you with the exception of what you've already answered relational to the hospital. And then again, what your guidance would be for us to dip into our reserves to help make up some portion of the difference.
Would you like me to answer? I mean,
yes, please.
Yeah. So, okay. I want to make sure that was the question, not just a statement. Yes, I think we need to look at a combination of things. I think we need to look at some more efficiencies if we can go through and try to make efficiencies. I think we need to raise our taxes to the index and generate that $1.7 million of revenue so that our programs aren't compromised beyond what they may already be compromised. We would look to, utilize a portion of our balancing with using fund balance. We are going to need some fund balance to balance our budget. Where that gets a little bit hairy is, like Mrs. Bearden mentioned, the state budget and the timeline of that. So right now we are sitting at a position of 50% budgeted revenues from the governor's proposed budget. If we were to see that full dollar amount, it's a little over $1 million. So you have to keep that in the back of your mind if you're going to use, say, $1 million of fund balance, and then we don't get that other money from the state revenues and we do put them in our budget. So, I mean, you're kind of balancing one side with the other, and ultimately that's any deficit's going to come out of fund balance if you don't get those revenues, because you already likely have the expenses budgeted, unless you can make that efficiency during mid-year. So it's going to entail a combination of those items. Is that what you were looking for? Okay. Would you like me to go to Mr. Heidel now?
Yes, please.
Okay.
I mean, I defer to the chair, but.
Okay. In regards to those 10, it was 10 transports for $500,000. Was that what you showed on that screen?
8.
Are 2 of those are being sent to Perkiomen Valley High School and 1 to Arcola Middle School, which are public schools? Are they offering some kind of programming we don't?
They are. It's programs that I believe Mr. Jeffries could give a little bit more background on, but they're programs that are
they're
through the
specialized
IU,
NCIU classrooms. So they are housed within school district facilities, much like we had. MCIU essentially rents space from specific spots. So the location is correct, but the provider isn't. We're not getting services from another school district. They're from a specialized program within the IU.
And then to Maureen, I hate saying this with Laura, but the money that is in the rent rebate program, is that fixed to that program, or can that money be pulled back and used towards this year's budget?
So the money from last year, no, I mean, it's budgeted in there. If it's not used, it would, if we didn't have any other expenses that would have, you know, taken up those funds, we'd end up with a surplus at the end of the year, which would increase our fund balance. At this point, with all of the other increases that we're seeing, I do not anticipate any surplus in the 24-25 budget.
So is there a way that you can take fund balance knowing we can replace that money as of July 1st? And what was the total in there again?
So the total of all funds is
No, not all funds. I'm talking about the rent rebate program funds.
Oh,
Is that
we
about
had
700,000 left in there?
I believe so. I'd have to go double check, but I think we were anticipating a little over 700,000 and we've expended about 100,000, so maybe 600,000.
So there's about 600,000 left. And like I said, is that dedicated to tax relief, or can that be pulled back and used towards?
No, it can be pulled back.
Unbalanced.
It can be pulled
Okay.
back and used. Yeah.
Okay, because it's something. I mean, I hate to do it to the renters, but we're raising taxes on everybody, and we're not going to be getting tax relief in this next budget. Just a thought.
I see Mrs. Spence again. I'm not sure if it's again or if.
Yeah, so I just have some more insight. So yeah, this is really bleak, right? But it's also for me not surprising. I mean, we haven't raised taxes since what, 6 years, and inflation has been an issue for several years now. Also, I don't think the market value assessments ever aligned. So that's a question. Like, so in 2020, the housing market shot up. Some homes valued over close to almost 100% of value, right? Increase. I don't know if we actually took that into consideration with assessments, and I don't know if our assessment is at market value. But I mean, we do pay the highest in taxes, so I can imagine what that would look like if it were at market value. And so just some other ideas is that, one, do we still have a grant writer? I think at one point they were repositioned to something else. We do still have a grant writer?
Yep, we still have grant writer.
Okay, so I think, in times of, so I come from a family of deep poverty, right? Generational poverty. And at times we had become really innovative, creative, and resourceful. And at really bad times, what we did as a family was deep introspection and a lot less pointing the finger at outside into different areas, but more saying what can we do to turn this around, like steer the wheel around and go forward instead of backwards. And during those times, even though they may have, the hard times went on for some times, but eventually when you get innovative and creative and resourceful, you start to turn that wheel around and things start to change, and it does get brighter. So I was thinking that we really need to do as a board and as a school district and as a community, because this affects everyone that lives here and that works here and that pays taxes here and that has a business here or is a landlord, investor, that it affects us all. We have to look at why are we losing students to charter school? Like, what are we missing in our school that these parents are rushing off to charter schools and cyber schools and all those things? We have to look at that. And I think that was it. So my thoughts, my ideas.
Thank you. I'll say the market value and the way that works with the assessed value. So it's a countywide assessment, and I don't believe that the county's been reassessed since the 80s. So that process takes place they do look, we look every month at the transfer tax report, and we have a number of properties that are in, have asked for relief in lowering their, questioning their assessed value. So Unfortunately, it doesn't just go right off of, market sales and house prices. There's a little bit more into that process. I'm happy to dive deeper at some
Well,
point, but yeah, to answer your question in short, we didn't get this big influx when we saw that big influx in the housing market. So unfortunately, that's not how it works.
Well, Delaware County did it. They did a reassessment. Um, uh, I think around the same time, 21, 22.
Okay.
And it was people had huge increases in their taxes, and it was a big thing for a while, but it settled down. And these were more well, anyway, they did it and Philadelphia did it. So
Yep.
Philadelphia and Delaware County are at market value pretty much almost to the T. So I don't know why Montgomery County hasn't done that since the 80s. That's interesting. But yeah, they Delaware County and Philadelphia County, they're closer to market value.
Yeah. I see Mr. Klein.
Thank you. Again, I'm sorry I'm not showing my picture. My internet connection is spotty tonight. A couple questions, Mr. Rodriguez. I think they're going to be more directed towards you. How can the state require us to submit a budget before we know their budget number? Is there any pushback from the various state associations? And is that just is so totally unfair? I mean, we have to make cost-cutting decisions that could increase or have long-term effects, and then we get more money from the state. That's so backwards.
It's an excellent question. It's one that we have been debating among school leaders with PSBA and others. We have repeatedly asked legislators to pass their budget first so that we have solid numbers. I believe there are definitely some legislators who are in favor of this, including Representative Cerisi. But the reality is they can make the rules for us, and they have codified those rules in law, which state minus irregular circumstances, we have to have a budget passed by June 30, and there is no such rule that would have been passed by them to do the same. They always try to do it, but they do not have to do it. So it's an excellent point. I do think that it is wildly unfair and forces us to gamble, to put it bluntly, in many respects. Now, Mrs. Oakley is highly skilled and does a very good job of predicting where things are going to be, but it should not be upon her, especially during times like this, where we have to potentially decide what stays and what goes. So I hope that answers the question, Mr. Klein.
I couldn't agree more. And maybe speaking to what Mrs. Spence just said, maybe one thing we need to do is get voters to start talking to the legislators that aren't Mr. Cerisi, who I know is in favor of it. Second question / comment. Special ed and cyber charter school budget increases are most of our budget increase. Is the state legislature looking into that at all, Mr. Rodriguez? Because they're just pulling numbers out of the air, it seems.
Yes, I can comment on that, and you're right. A comment that we reflected as Montgomery County district leaders met today down in Norristown, and one of the things that we observed is, number one, this is not the fault of special education families, which is oftentimes when we say the costs are exploding, everyone will say that. But the reality is that the level of funding for basic education funding, or BEF, which Mrs. Oakley often refers to, that has continually gone up, and that's kind of a big crowd pleaser at the end of every year. They'll say, hey, we've increased funding, etc. But they don't do that. If you look year over year, the special education costs versus the reimbursement have been, I believe, minuscule was the word that Mrs. Oakley used at one point. So and the other thing to note is I think our staff does a great job of providing as much resources as they can. And there is a natural flow to these things. When students struggle, we give them intervention and we do our very best to make sure that they can read. When they come to a certain age, when we're realizing and it's becoming evident with data that they need a little bit more help, they're often identified. But one of the things that we are noticing is that, you know, in 12th grade, if there are, let's say, 30 or 40 students who graduate and we congratulate them and they have IEPs, on the other side with early intervention, we might have 60 students, and I'm making these numbers up, but you understand the percentage and the point that I'm making, that those students are already identified in the 0 through 4 years old process of needing support, but the funding has not gone with them. The other thing to note is that, and Mrs. Spence made a great point, and I wasn't going to say anything then, but I'll say it now. We have two issues with cyber. Issue number one, which has been very well covered in the press, is that the funding formula that dates back to, I think, 2001 or 1998, I don't know when it was, but a really long time ago, has not been updated. We did update it slightly with regard to the formula for each school district. But every time we get money, and one of the points, Mrs. Johnson, that I think you were kind of making, every time we get money for fair funding, you know, we get $10 in the front door, but $3 automatically go in the back, because as soon as we have more money, that formula then means that cyber schools get more money. Dr. Latanya White Springfield and I talk regularly, up to and including this morning, about the students that we have in our virtual alternative learning program, which is going very well. We have 70 plus students who have a lot of support. But when we lose very few students, and we do lose students, but we lose very few students, where we see the big growth is where families are coming from outside places, and we'll say within a 10-mile region, and for whatever reason, oftentimes economical, they're already in these cyber schools and they move into Pottstown, and the cyber school just sends us the bill. So we oftentimes never meet those families. We do send literature to them, letting them know that we have resources. But that is a major problem as far as I'm concerned with regard to our funding structure in Pennsylvania.
Thank you.
I see Mrs. Johnson.
Yeah, I have a couple more questions. One, just sticking with the charter school tuition issue. Last year, the state legislature passed an update for cyber charters, and I believe that it was at the start of this calendar year that the new 16% amount kicked in for special education tuition, not that the rule kicked in, but that they got rid of the 16% and we could use our own numbers to calculate that tuition. Is that help? I mean, is the help from that already factored in? Like, or are we, I would just have this thought that maybe there's a little bit of a help.
Yeah, there's a little bit of a help. It's not a lot. It's 3,500, maybe 4,000 per special education student who attends a cyber. The differential in the tuition comes between a cyber charter, which is, you know, an online, and then the brick and mortar, which is an in-person charter. So we actually have, you know, they added a rate, which is a reduced rate. So we're thankful to have that, but it's all in there, and
that was in what you showed. That was like the 27,000. That is because of that change.
Correct.
Yep. Okay. There was also funding in last year's budget that was supposed to help offset the special education tuition. It was like a line item in the budget. Did that also have a significant impact on us or no?
That I think flowed through to that charter formula.
Okay.
It went into that charter formula.
Okay.
I don't think there was nothing.
It wasn't
like, yeah, there was no special revenue line item that was added, you know, to offset our costs, essentially. They baked some of those changes into that formula.
Okay. And then I know this year that the proposed change is that it would be 8,000 for regular ed cyber charter students. And to be completely honest, one glimmer of hope that I'm feeling right now as it relates to all of this is because of the Auditor General's report demonstrating how much they're getting that they're not even using for any kind of education, that there is more energy this year for cyber charter reform. And I never count my chickens before they hatch. So, but I am at least encouraged by that. The other thought, just thinking of that assessments thing, my understanding as far as a reason that we don't have updated assessments has a lot to do with how expensive it is to do countywide assessments. I don't know, at the end of the day, it's hard to know how much it would help us because people will still have to raise those revenues from our community, regardless of how current the assessments are. But I assume part of the reason that our total, like all of the total accessible property or total potential property on the tax rolls is so stagnant is because we're landlocked, right? And there's not a lot of places to build, whereas communities around us, you know, new development goes up or a new shopping center goes in and there's just new tax revenue right out of the gate without anybody else's taxes going up. It's just
land development. Yep.
Land development. So that's part of that stagnation. I guess my last thought, just looking at the areas where you put forward with special ed and tuition and transportation and benefits and salaries, is it can feel like those are such general categories that it's hard to like look at that and know like what we have control over and what we don't, and where the potential savings is. And I think that's probably a lot of the work that you do to try to look in and see where that savings is. But am I right in feeling like at least when it comes to special ed and also tuition and transportation, we have very little control. Is that, or the decisions aren't made, they're not made based on cost really at all. They're made based on what's deemed appropriate special education, or just, and really that's a lot of it, right? Because that's driving tuition. And so I think with the special ed side, I know there was a question, maybe it was from Ms. Spence, about has the legislature looked at what can be done, like, or what potential updates there are with special ed. I think that I know that's mostly driven by the federal side, which contributes even less money. But I just feel like that's such a tough issue because it just can feel like there's no, it's not a decision that can even be looked at. It is what it is. That's how I feel right now. Is that how you guys sometimes feel too? Like those aren't decisions that are, you know, those aren't financial decisions.
Yeah. There's a process and there's regulations and mandates and things that we have to do to provide, you know, free and appropriate education. So we are governed by a lot of laws and a lot of things that, you know, we just have to comply to. So that's it's unfortunate that, you know, some of those things are just hard for us to, you know, control. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Right. And then Mrs. Spence, your hand is up.
Yeah, just real quick.
Okay.
I know you're tired. I'm tired. Everyone's tired. Just real quick. I noticed like in Philadelphia, the mayor is calling on religious institutions, the hospitals, and private schools to start making some type of contribution or quote unquote tax towards the school district. What would we call that if we were to make that plea? Is that considered a non-voluntary or voluntary tax?
Payment in lieu of taxes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Otherwise known as pilot.
And
And
payment
Mrs.
in lieu
and I
of
are
taxes. Yeah.
very much in favor of such a program.
All right. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Hilton, I am happy to report there's no more hands, I believe.
Okay, so before we get on to information and Mr. Rodriguez, because I think we're done with that discussion, I would like to make a request and hoping I can do so without screaming and crying. I just want to know the facts. And the fact that I want to know is, and I've gone through the mandate book, 200 pages or whatever, and was surprised at what's in there and what's not in there. But I would like to know what is absolutely mandated by the state and what isn't. For example, not to have somebody jump through the screen and strangle me, is athletics mandated? Is library mandated? Is art mandated? Is music mandated? I couldn't tell that from reading through this 200-page book of mandates. There's plenty of stuff on special ed, I got that. But I'd just like to know, so we all know, what's worst comes to worst, because I don't think things are going to get better. We have a president who's not very friendly towards education. He's looking at cutting Medicaid. And if the governor has to make a choice between education and Medicaid, that's going to be very, very difficult. So anyway, not to belabor that, I would like to get that information. So with that, I will close out the finance part and move it to Mr. Rodriguez for appendage zones.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hilton. This is just one of our, and we don't have to do this often, but in the curriculum, or maybe it was policy committee, last Thursday, we talked a little bit about attendance zones and the fact that we are looking to update them due to the imbalance that we have noted year after year. And board members have all the information as it relates to our, to the numbers within our schools. My executive assistant is able to give you that usually around the first of the month of every month. So you can go back and see that if you like. But for what it's worth, Rupert is typically much higher by a significant percentage than all the other schools. So we are looking at potentially making a change. And I took some good questions at the last committee meeting as it relates to what that change would look like, and what about fourth graders? Would they be forced to move in their last year? And the answer is absolutely not. And we would be speaking with families, and it would be a small group at this point that we would be working with, but we would hope to balance the schools, even if only slightly. So Rupert will likely, by the end of this, still be the biggest, but not by as large a percent. So Mr. Hilton, thank you for the opportunity. I'll take questions if there are any.
I do not see any hands raised, so I'll now at this point ask if there is any public comment.
Not at this time, Mr. Hilton.
Okay, do you have any announcements for us?
Just the information that April 10th will be our next meeting.
All right, then, unless someone has something else, I will declare this meeting adjourned.
I think Stephen had one more thing.
Oh, sorry.
I was just wondering, Mr. Hilton, if you would mind, I know that we processed a lot, so and it was a lot, and we appreciate your patience and endurance. But if you have any thoughts, directions, or recommendations for Mrs. Oakley and I think we talked about a couple of different things that we could do, and we talked about it. But as you know, I take my role as a servant of the board very seriously. So I would like to hear, and if the answer is, Stephen, I don't know, or I don't want to talk about it right now, I can accept that. But I want to make sure that I'm doing my due diligence to hear from board members with regard to direction that you would like us to investigate or move toward, and to make sure that we don't, end up having the same conversation in a month.
I'll just jump in and take advantage of my privilege here. I think everything we discussed is needed to do, as painful as it is. And frankly, I think there's going to have to be more. Because as I said, it's not like we just had this 11 million, we're saying 9 million because we're expecting the state to give us a certain amount of money. But if we're $11 million short, that's just this upcoming year. It's not going to get better, it's only going to get worse. So, because we don't have a public school friendly federal government, and to speak to just even the fair funding formula, the Senate Republicans are saying, we need to rethink this formula. Hey, these urban schools, maybe they're getting too much money here. We need to rethink that. So I don't think things are going to get better. So my judgment, and I'm speaking first, but my judgment is we're going to need to do all the stuff we discussed.
Thank you.
Just real quick, Mr. Hilton, is that the book you're reading about the mandates? Did you get that online or you already had it in your library?
I believe that Mr. Rodriguez emailed us all a PDF of it several months ago.
Okay.
It's from the Montgomery County IU, and I'm sure he can email you the whole thing.
Can you resend it, please, Mr.
Yes,
Rodriguez?
ma'am. Yes,
Okay,
ma'am.
thank you.
Do it tonight.
All right, thank you.
Okay, I will take
I was just gonna say, just to chime in, I agree with Mr. Hilton. Like, I don't see any way to not kind of pursue all of the things that we talked about.
okay. Okay, thank you, everyone.
Thank you, and I declare the meeting adjourned.
Thank you. Have a good evening.